And action. My name is Oscar Dennis. I grew up in Kenya, spent all my childhood there. Went to a little primary school just on the outskirts of Nairobi called the Banda School. Grew up as all we do in Africa a little bit, kind of feral and dirty, getting chased by warthogs across our school fields. But yeah, life was kind of very cool, wild and free as a youngster. Through school I played a whole heap of sports, loved sports. It's such a outdoorsy culture here in Africa. We're privileged with the sun, so yeah, a lot of the time was spent outdoors. That was kind of through my primary school. I then got shipped off to the UK by my mother for secondary school, where she said I could be in Africa all of my life, me and my sister. And so she sent us off to a school called Kingswood in Bath, which I had an amazing time. The winters were a little bit grim, but no, life was yeah, good over there. It took a little bit of adjusting to not being in Africa and the freedom of kind of the wild, and instead being in a city. But adjusted well. Played sport the whole way through life in the UK. I kind of focused on my rugby and my hockey whilst I was over there. Played for Bath Junior for a bit, which kind of took me down my rugby route in life. Finished Kingswood School in 2013, where I then actually headed to Australia. But before I went to Australia, I suffered a really bad groin injury. With that groin injury, it meant I missed my last school year of sport. I then flew down to South Africa just before I went off to Australia, where I had a quick 15-minute operation. I had Gilmore's groin. They just tightened that all up. They cut into my lower abdominals and kind of sewed everything together and tightened it up. I then went off to Australia, played rugby for University of Queensland for 6 months, just getting back into sport, having not played it for a year. After that 6 months, I then headed back to Kenya to play for my club side in the local kind of sevens scene, where I was then picked up by Kenya Sevens, which then was the start of kind of the next 8 years of my life. Through that, I ended up getting a scholarship to university in Australia at Bond University on the Gold Coast to study and play over there, which was awesome. Had an amazing kind of 2 years that side. Finished playing rugby over there, having had another few injuries. I mean, a broken cheek, a broken collarbone. The list goes on and on and on with me and my injuries, which we'll get into. I then moved back to Kenya as the Sevens asked me to come back, and then kind of a couple months back there, they then said, no, we don't have a budget for you. So it was then at this point where I decided to head to Russia, actually. So I lived in St. Petersburg for maybe about 2 months, kind of in the off season, where there was a coach of ours from Australia Icons who is now coaching, I guess it's the only sevens professional club side in the world called Zastava Rugby. So there was me, Dennis Ombachi, who's another Kenyan sevens player, and then a Fijian sevens boy called Sonny. The three of us kind of got an apartment and lived together in Russia. What an interesting place. I mean, I've never been somewhere so foreign in my life where nobody speaks English or is so unwilling to speak English as well. So we lived our lives for 2 months basically on Google Translate. I then left there. I then went back to Kenya to play for Samurai Rugby in October in the Safari Sevens, where we ended up beating Kenya in the final. And it was after that that I then got put back into the Kenya Sevens side. I then sustained a very bad ankle injury just before heading to Dubai Sevens. So I moved down to South Africa for 3 or 4 months, where I joined the Stellenbosch Academy of Sport rugby program. They kind of got me fit and running again. This was through Frankie Horn. And then I went back to Kenya and then debuted on the World Series just after that in Hong Kong. Made my debut in Hong Kong first game was against Fiji, second game was against Australia, and third game was against New Zealand. So it was thrown in the deep end, if you will. But yeah, life kind of carried on from that. Then November 2019 qualified for Tokyo 2020 Olympics. That then got pushed due to the coronavirus, COVID. So played LA and Vancouver, which would have been March of 2020, where the coronavirus was just picking up. So we got home and we got asked to quarantine for 2 weeks. Anyway, we didn't know the severity of it. And in kind of March the 16th, the whole world shut down. And so I didn't pick up a rugby ball for about 6 months. I was just at home. It was quite a nice time in a weird way for us. I was up at home with my family. Everyone was at home. The north of Kenya was kind of open. So we weren't in lockdown as such. We could travel around. And so we had an amazing time during COVID exploring the north of Kenya and visiting lodges and all of that. Really, these birds. And then a World 10 Series was set up in Bermuda, actually. And so we went out there in October of 2020, where we were kind of hosted in a 5-star resort. We were out there for 4 or 5 weeks, playing a 10 kind of tournament, kind of a 3-part tournament. I was with a South Africa franchise coached by Frankie Horn and Philip Snyman. We then ended up winning that, which was amazing. The first time in my life I didn't really have an injury. And then that's when life changed. I got home on the Tuesday morning and my car was flat. My mum had used it. I've got an old short wheelbase Land Cruiser and there's a little button on the steering column that she hadn't turned off. And so my battery was flat. And I'd taken my motorbike to Nairobi just because I'd been riding it through COVID. So I took it for service. And so I just jumped on that to go 500 meters or so up the road to see my mate. And on the way home is where I was turning right and a car was overtaking and they kind of struck me from the side. This is where I then almost lost my leg. I got medevac down to South Africa for immediate kind of treatment and got told I was due for amputation twice. Managed to get through that. Was in hospital for 5 weeks and got out just before Christmas. In those kind of 5-6 weeks, I had 7 surgeries. For the next kind of year and a half, I did rehab. It was all down here in Cape Town. And then, yeah, I kind of ended up taking on triathlon in March last year. I got the call up to assist Algarda in Paris for the tandem road cycling. So I was at the Paralympics, which was an awesome experience. And now I'm going for LA 2028 in triathlon. This is my journey.
Dude, that's awesome.
Is that all right?
That was perfect.
Bro, I was just chatting shit, so it's...
Awesome.
And the birds and cows and... they must all be getting fed.
Yeah.
Sweet.